I would like to mention Chroma, lights designed for humans. Chroma, a Seattle-based innovator founded by ex-NASA and Air Force engineer Michael Shapiro, is on a mission to enhance physical and mental health with purpose-built devices, unlocking peak human health, cognitive function, and performance. Shapiro launched Chroma to restore the natural light lost to screens in indoor living and delivers faster recovery, sharper minds, and better sleep. Their products hit hard. The Iron Forge speeds muscle repair with red and near-infrared light, while the Skylight mimics sunlight to boost sleep and energy. A standout, the Forge lamp, is a portable gem that fires 660 nanometer and 850 nanometer light to energize mitochondria and heal tissues on the go. Remember the 4 red light chromophores on cytochrome C oxidase, frequently talked about in the podcast. This is why. Their products are built with military-grade durability that have lasting impact. Chroma's tech fuses precision and power. Gallium titride power supplies, smaller, cooler, and stronger than silicone, provide flicker-free light that's easy on the eyes. High-powered LEDs target key wavelengths for skin, tissue, and cellular health, with smart heat management for the lasting impact. Every design decision Chroma makes serves a purpose: to create devices that are precise, durable, and effective for improving human life. Remember, humans use different wavelengths of light for different functions of life. Remember when I ask, what do you think light is? Chroma designs with our biology in mind, from sleep aids and wound healing to mitochondrial energy, full body lights and blue light blocking glasses. They are US made and Chroma ships globally and accepts FSA and HSA payments. Use Autism at checkout for a 10% off discount. That's Autism at checkout for a 10% off discount. For today's episode, I want to expand on the supplementing relationships and autism concept. For today's episode, I want to talk about the dialogue or monologue happening with these thinking and pictures and movies being created in the imagination. This dialogue is very real-like. I can do this as I am interacting with the others in my imagination, visual movie creation, and the others respond and carry on the conversation. And I can do this without me in the imagination, just the others. This is a huge accelerator for the supplementing relationships. This is extremely real life. Before we get into my experience, let's recap the history of autism. Remember, autism comes from autos, which translates into self. And remember, autism was first associated with intense, dreamlike states, originally mentioned by Eugen Bleuler in the early 1900s, 1910, 1911 time. This was especially true for childlike schizophrenia. Remember the closeness of schizophrenia and autism. Kanner, in large part, got autism shifted out of schizophrenia, and this happened in the late 1950s. Schizophrenia has a spectrum of visual and audio hallucinations, delusions, disorganized speech, and motor control. So of course, speech and language and motor control also shared phenotypes. The main difference is the intensity. So Kanner and Asperger, too overlooked. Their work is too underrated and neglected. They both highlighted self-directed communication, self-monologue with no intent to the environment, no regard of or to others, and preferred to be isolated, withdrew from society when possible, and when forced, behaviors, problems, so forth exist. Remember me saying the outside world is complicated, chaotic, and uninteresting. To add, all autistics 100% have some sort of speech and language, or said better, language and speech problem. So again and again, in time, the combination of our biology, the lack of socialness through our life, and the bad memories and examples of socialness, more and more propensity to remain isolated is a factor. See the autism and speech and language episode. Every time I call it speech and language, I want to reverse it, but I have learned to hit a break on that. I hope and think you get it. Speech and language is not the process. Language, then speech, seems appropriate. Okay, so some of the Kanner information, Kanner data. Kanner's take on this phenomena is, he said the kid's speech wasn't meant to reach others. It was not meant to convey meaning, but served their own internal needs, like a private rhythm or self-soothing tool. It's like they were having a conversation with themselves, not expecting or wanting a listener. The monologue-like speech patterns. Kanner described this as kind of like narrating their own thoughts out loud. And I've talked about how as excitation kind of builds up and I'm in my head and that all of that energy is happening, I can start to increase my motor movements, pacing, and so forth. Stereotypy movements, moving my lips, and then eventually speaking out loud. An example of Kanner is Charles. He would mutter short sentences about objects he was fixated on. Like the train goes fast while playing alone. It wasn't directed at anyone. It was as if he was verbalizing to make sense of his world. Kanner also observed that these monologues could go on for long stretches, especially when the kids were absorbed in repetitive activities, like lining up toys. The speech felt like a running commentary for themselves, not a call for someone else to join in, no regard for the others in the environment. And Kanner emphasized that this self-directed speech was a core part of the kids' autistic aloneness. He described how they talk during solitary play, often in a low voice, as if the act of speaking was enough, and no response was expected. He noted that some kids would even repeat entire conversations they'd overheard, but not to engage anyone, just to replay the words in their imagination. Asperger also captured some of this. Asperger captured monologues on the obsessions. He was fascinated by how kids would launch into long, detailed monologues to themselves about their favorite topic, completely absorbed in their own words and imagination. Fritz would go into mathematical problems and patterns and constellations for a long bout, just this imaginary world. And he would do this alone. Harrow would talk endlessly about tram routes and speaking all of their stops in order in a very rhythmic way. Asperger thought this monologue was for their own kids' satisfaction. Again, no expectation for communication to others. Asperger, I just love the Asperger's little professors. And Asperger captured this lecture-like academic delivery of these kids. He thought the kids spoke in a formal academic style about their interest, but it was still all to themselves. It was for their own satisfaction. Ernst would talk about chemical formulas like he was giving a lecture, and Asperger noted it was a performance for his own enjoyment. No expectation, no conveyance to others. He'd go on for minutes structuring his thoughts out loud, completely focused on himself and his imagination. Asperger saw this self-directed speech as tied to the kids' intellectual strengths. I consider it, a source of accelerated learning. We're speaking to ourselves. We're professing to ourselves. This is absolutely true. This is part of that autistic intelligence. Now, the majority of the Asperger's paper in 1944 highlights autistic intelligence. Talking out loud was a way to process complex thoughts and kind of accelerate these passions. He described kids muttering during the solitary activities while being alone for long periods of time. So what I do, within a few minutes of waking, my brain starts to kind of build up that energy, as I recently just mentioned, almost like it is entering a gate into this imaginary world. And within 10 to 15 minutes, I am fixed on a topic. It could be something I am learning, or it could be something about these supplementing relationships. It could be something in kind of a cortical loop, just something stuck in my head even. As you listen, I want you to consider how much noise in the background, other people coming into my existence, trying to talk to me, implicates the internal world. This external conveyance, this dialogue with others, really penetrates and disrupts this imagination. Remember the listening dissonance from a conversation about the medial prefrontal cortex. Listening dissonance. A part of the prefrontal that is leading adaptive responses is the medial prefrontal cortex. And listening dissonance is a big disruption, a big interference. And a common phenomena with autistics, it is a conundrum for us. Previously, I talked about those vivid and reliable movies coming online. This is happening fast, 10, 15 minutes after waking. Now we need to have the conversations. Regardless of the context of my thoughts, of those movies, I will have self-directed communication. This ratchets us up as I wake up, and it will go into a lot of brain energy, the pacing and their stereotyping movements, and even I can speak out loud. Definitely move my lips during silent speaking. I can feel myself doing this. I've learned to catch myself. I've never really known that before until a few years ago even. These conversations are real, and I know these are a component of that accelerated learning, this undisputed to me. When it consists of this supplementing relationships, there's back and forth going on in my imagination. They are frequent. And here is something to consider. I suspect I can have these internal conversations as much as sociable or so-called extroverted people have in a day. But it is not just me having this monologue, these conversations. Remember the previous episode on this. I see the others, and they are having conversations with their own relationships, all imagined, all very vivid and real, movie-like. Now this example, the dialogue at this point doesn't happen often. Mostly, other people, the imagination with others, plural. Whenever I see other people kind of conducting their life, living their life, without me in it. These are mostly visual, without the talking. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that's always true. Sometimes they will have conversations back and forth with each other. This conversation piece is a huge part of the supplementing. This is it. Between that and the amount of it that's probably comparable to extroverts. That's the relationship. That's our source of relationship. Now also imagine the amount of the internal socialness. And then we are expected to conduct real conversations on top of that, in addition to that. That's a lot. With everything I've mentioned, go see the translation of autism. I want to add, this internal monologue does not have speech and language problems. Okay, I really want to highlight that because autistics have different speech and language problems. But during this internal monologue, when speaking to the self, it doesn't happen. I've been like this as far as I can remember. My earliest memory is 4 years old, maybe some parts of 3 years old. And I know I was this age because where we lived, my mom and I lived. I can take you on a tour of the trailer we rented from the house on the hill across from the old GE factory. Then we moved to the house that she still lives in. And I have vivid memories of still living in that trailer. But the supplementing relationships phenomena, with the seeing others and seeing me interact with others, just having these movies playing in my head, and then the conversations, this is real life. It's real life-like. And the consideration of kind of supplementing these relationships and then expecting to have real conversations and relationships is very challenging. The internal, the imagination, we can predict those. There's no kind of environmental or external insults happening. And I think that's a very safe and predictable area for us to navigate. Plus, we can kind of dictate sometimes, not all. We can kind of dictate when we can socialize, which is not a very predictable thing in reality. This allows us to understand and prepare and enjoy our restricted, fixated interest that are abnormal in intensity or focus in our dreamlike internal world. If you are listening to the podcast, listening to the episode, please feel free to leave a review or rating. In podcasting, reviews, ratings, and downloads are huge. I very much appreciate your feedback. You can contact me on X at RPS47586. You can check out the YouTube channel for all the videos and shorts. You can contact me with email info.fromthespectrum@gmail.com. And thank you for listening to From the Spectrum podcast. I would like to take a moment and mention a pressing issue we are seeing in our modern world. and that is tech use and tech light. The data are impressive and concerning on isolated wavelengths of light, especially shorter wavelengths, which is blue light. For those that don't know, we have chromophores, which are special proteins that absorbs specific wavelengths of light. For blue light, the light that is LED light and tech light, that protein is called melanopsin. Melanopsin is responsible for our circadian biology, physiology and cell functioning, hormone regulation, and even a connection to an area huge for mood. A consideration we should include is this protein was not even discovered until 1998. It seems important for us to understand how our biology uses the different wavelengths of light for various aspects of our biology. This blue light chromophore is our master controller, our master clock. Remember, circadian rhythm is a two-part process, two independent parts, light and dark. For a quick reference, see the 2017 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. But for now, I have something exciting. I want to introduce a product unlike any other product available. A highlight is the product from Daylight Computer Company created their product based on these factors. The Daylight computer is completely blue light free. It has no flicker. Short wavelength flicker is extremely harmful for our eyes and downstream biology. Light flicker is constantly turning our central nervous system on and off. Essentially, it is like going to a light switch and repeatedly turning it on and off. The problem is, blue light and LED light does this, and it is so rapid you cannot even perceive this in real time. The Daylight computer is the lowest stimulation and foremost for sensory sensitive users. It is no question that the alternative product, especially when used at night, do not address or consider this in their product. It is so toxic to human biology. Big tech corporations have patents on how their short wavelengths implicate the human nervous system. And a bonus, despite Daylight computer not having backlight, it is very functional for outdoor use. And of course, increased sunlight is always preferred. I am happy to offer a discount for the Daylight computer. You can use the code AUTISM for a $25 off coupon. Again, use the code AUTISM and the discount code for $25 off. See the link in the show notes to Daylight Computer Company, or just give it a quick search in your internet browser. Use the code AUTISM for $25 off.